The soft hum of chatter and the clinking of glasses filled the air at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Michael Grant, a renowned tech entrepreneur known for his sharp business acumen and impressive fortune, walked through the grand doors with an air of quiet authority. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, he was there to discuss a new venture with potential investors. But as he glanced across the room, his steps faltered. At a table near the window sat Chloe Evans, the woman he had once loved deeply but left behind 5 years ago. She looked radiant, her confidence unmistakable, as she sipped her wine. By her side sat a lively boy with golden curls and striking blue eyes, a mirror image of Michael himself. The sight sent a jolt through him. Could it be? His mind raced, but he maintained his composure, unwilling to disrupt the moment just yet. 5 years ago, Michael Grant stood in the living room of Chloe Evans' modest apartment, his posture stiff, his gaze averted. Chloe, a dedicated preschool teacher, had just finished preparing dinner, her apron still tied around her waist, when Michael's cold voice cut through the warm, homely air. "This isn't working, Chloe," he said, his tone firm but lacking conviction. Chloe froze, disbelief etched across her face. "What are you saying, Michael?" she asked, her voice trembling. "After everything we've been through?" Michael clenched his fists, forcing himself to look away from her tear-grilled eyes. Deep down, he knew the decision wasn't truly his. It was his family's. They had pressured him relentlessly, deeming Chloe unworthy of their status. A preschool teacher from a small town didn't fit into their vision of a legacy. "My family is right," he muttered, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. "We're from different worlds. This would never work." Chloe's heart shattered. "You're letting them decide your life," she said, stepping closer. Her voice was low but filled with indignation. "I thought you were stronger than this, Michael." He didn't respond. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the faint sound of a clock ticking on the wall. Taking a shaky breath, Chloe wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. "If you think this is what's best, then go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael hesitated for a moment before walking out the door. Each step felt heavier than the last, and when it closed behind him, Chloe collapsed onto the sofa, her world crumbling around her. In the weeks following Michael's departure, Chloe Evans struggled to find her footing. Her once cozy apartment now felt cold and empty, the shadows of memories haunting every corner. The engagement ring she had once worn with pride now sat in a drawer, hidden but not forgotten. One late evening, her phone buzzed with an unexpected call. The name on the screen made her hesitate. Thomas Evans, her father. Chloe hadn't spoken to him or her mother in years, not since she'd left their sprawling estate in search of a life that was truly hers. "Chloe?" Her father's voice was firm, yet there was an edge of urgency. "Come home. We need to talk." Reluctantly, Chloe agreed. A part of her wanted to resist, but another part knew she couldn't avoid her past forever. When she arrived at the Evans mansion, the grandeur of her childhood home overwhelmed her. The towering columns, the marble floors, the butler who greeted her at the door. It all felt foreign, like stepping into a life that no longer belonged to her. In the grand hall, her parents awaited her. Thomas, ever the authoritative patriarch, sat in his leather armchair, his expression serious. Beside him stood her mother, Margaret, elegant and poised as always. "I didn't think I'd ever come back here," Chloe said, crossing her arms. Thomas didn't mince words. "We've made mistakes, Chloe, but we need you now. The family business is at a crossroads, and I want you to take over." Chloe's eyes widened. "Me? You always said I wasn't fit for the business." Her father sighed, a rare admission of vulnerability. "We were wrong. You're the only one we can trust with this. I'm not getting any younger, and this company needs strong leadership." Though conflicted, Chloe couldn't ignore the gravity of his words. She had spent her life running from the expectations tied to the Evans name, but now, with her heart still raw from Michael's betrayal, a new determination began to take root. "Fine," she said, her voice steady. "But if I do this, I do it my way." From that moment, Chloe immersed herself in the world of high-stakes business. The numbers, the negotiations, the endless meetings. It was grueling, but also exhilarating. Under her leadership, Evans Hotels began to thrive, expanding into new markets and earning accolades for innovation. Through every triumph, Chloe reminded herself of one thing. She was no longer the woman Michael Grant had left behind. She was stronger now, independent, resilient. It had been nearly 5 years since Chloe Evans had walked away from the shattered pieces of her life, but the memory of that day still lingered. She had spent countless nights wondering how things could have been different, but the moment she discovered she was pregnant changed everything. Chloe remembered the day clearly. After weeks of unexplained fatigue and nausea, she finally decided to see a doctor. Sitting in the small clinic's waiting room, she felt a strange mix of anxiety and hope. When the doctor confirmed her pregnancy, Chloe's heart stopped for a moment. "Pregnant?" she whispered, her hand instinctively resting on her stomach. The doctor nodded, smiling warmly. "Yes, and you're about 8 weeks along. Congratulations." Chloe's mind raced. She thought of Michael, how he had left, how his family's rejection had crushed her. But now, there was no time for sorrow. This baby, this new life growing inside her, was a reason to move forward. The journey wasn't easy. Chloe dealt with sleepless nights, morning sickness, and moments of crushing loneliness. There were times she questioned if she could do it, but every kick she felt reminded her of her strength. When Leo was born, Chloe looked into his bright blue eyes for the first time and knew she had made the right choice. He was perfect, and in that moment she vowed to give him everything: love, security, and a future free from the shadows of her past. It was a crisp autumn evening when Chloe Evans walked into La Belle Étoile, the city's most exclusive restaurant, hand in hand with Leo, now a lively 5-year-old. Dressed in a sleek black dress, Chloe exuded confidence, her transformation over the years evident in every step. Leo, with his golden curls and infectious energy, chattered excitedly about the piano in the corner of the room. "Mommy, do you think they'll let me play?" Leo asked, his bright blue eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Maybe after dinner," Chloe replied with a warm smile, guiding him to their table by the window. As they settled in, Chloe couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The years had been challenging, but moments like this with Leo reminded her of what truly mattered. She picked up her glass of wine and took a sip, her mind wandering to the future she was building for them both. But then, the restaurant door swung open and her serenity shattered. Michael Grant entered, accompanied by 2 sharply dressed investors. His tailored suit and commanding presence turned heads as he made his way to a nearby table. Chloe froze for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. It had been 5 years since she'd last seen him, but the memories flooded back as if it were yesterday. Michael, unaware of her presence, engaged in conversation with his companions. But as the waiter led him to a table near hers, his eyes finally fell on Chloe. The glass in his hand nearly slipped. His hand suddenly slipped, his glass slipped. Chloe met his gaze with calm composure, refusing to let him see the unease bubbling beneath her surface. She took another sip of wine, as if his presence didn't affect her at all. Michael's eyes shifted from Chloe to the boy sitting beside her. Leo, now busy nibbling on a piece of bread, looked up briefly and smiled at the stranger. Michael's chest tightened. The boy's features, his blue eyes, the curve of his jaw, were unmistakable. Gathering his courage, Michael excused himself from the investors and approached Chloe's table. His voice, usually steady and authoritative, wavered slightly. "Chloe," he began. Feigning surprise, Chloe looked up. "Michael, what a coincidence." Michael glanced at Leo, then back at Chloe. "Are you, well?" "Very well, thank you," she replied curtly. Her tone was polite, but her guarded expression spoke volumes. Michael hesitated, his gaze lingering on Leo. Finally, he couldn't hold back the question burning inside him. "Who is he?" Chloe leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with him. Her voice was firm and deliberate. "This is Leo, my son." The words hit Michael like a thunderclap. His mind raced as he looked at the boy again, the resemblance undeniable. "Your son?" he repeated, incredulous. "Yes, Michael," Chloe said calmly. "My son." Michael Grant sat in his sleek corner office, staring blankly at the city skyline. The weight of the previous evening's revelations bore down on him. "Leo is my son," he thought, the words echoing in his mind. The realization filled him with both wonder and guilt. How could Chloe have carried this burden alone? Why hadn't she reached out? Or perhaps, why hadn't he fought harder to stay in her life? The questions gnawed at him, but another thought surfaced. Why didn't I fight harder for her back then? Determined to uncover the truth, Michael called his most trusted private investigator, Daniel Hayes. "Daniel," Michael said, his voice firm but laced with urgency, "I need everything you can find on Chloe Evans from the past 5 years, where she's been, what she's been through. I need answers, and quickly." Within 48 hours, Daniel returned with a thick dossier, his expression unusually serious. "You'll want to read this carefully," Daniel said, sliding the file across Michael's desk. "There's more to Chloe's story than you might expect." Michael hesitated for a moment, then opened the file. As he flipped through the pages, his stomach churned. The first section detailed Chloe's return to her family estate shortly after their breakup. Michael had known Chloe came from a well-off family, but the report revealed something he hadn't grasped fully before. Her parents, Thomas and Margaret Evans, were not just wealthy, they were one of the most powerful families in the hospitality industry. The next section outlined Chloe's unexpected rise to power. After returning home, she had been pressured into taking over the Evans family's struggling hotel chain. Despite having no prior business experience, Chloe had transformed it into a thriving empire. Headlines about her innovative leadership splashed across the pages of the dossier, but it was the attached photos that struck Michael the most. There she was, standing confidently at the helm of board meetings, addressing international press conferences, and even receiving awards for her work. The same woman his family had dismissed as unworthy had become a titan in her own right. Michael's grip on the papers tightened. His heart ached with a mixture of regret and shame. How had he ever let his family convince him she wasn't good enough? Then came the medical records. Michael's breath caught as he read through the details of Chloe's pregnancy, complications in the early months, visits to a private clinic, stress-induced episodes that had put both Chloe and the baby at risk. The final blow came with Leo's early years. The boy had suffered respiratory complications as a newborn, requiring frequent hospital visits and constant care. Chloe had endured it all alone. While Michael had been expanding his tech empire, hosting lavish events and gracing the covers of business magazines, Chloe had been fighting battles he couldn't even begin to imagine. Michael closed the file and leaned back in his chair, his hands trembling slightly. The weight of his choices pressed down on him. He thought of the day he walked out of Chloe's apartment, the coldness in his voice as he repeated his family's judgment. "We're from different worlds." How blind he had been. A surge of guilt washed over him, deeper than he had ever felt before. It wasn't just regret, it was a profound sense of failure. Not only had he abandoned the woman he loved, but he had also missed the first 5 years of his son's life. Determined to make things right, Michael reached out to Chloe, but each call went unanswered. After days of silence, he sent her a simple but direct message. "I need to talk to you about Leo. Please let me explain." Chloe's reply came hours later. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Park. Come alone." When the time came, Michael arrived at the park early. He spotted Chloe sitting on a bench under the shade of a large oak tree, watching Leo play on the grass. Her expression was unreadable, her defenses clearly still up. Michael approached cautiously. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. Chloe gestured for him to sit, but kept her gaze on Leo. "Say what you need to say, Michael." Taking a deep breath, Michael began. "I didn't know about Leo. If I had, I would have been there. But I understand why you didn't tell me." Chloe's eyes flickered with emotion, but she remained silent. Michael continued, his voice steady but tinged with guilt. "I let my family dictate my choices back then. I was weak, but I'm not that man anymore. I want to be part of Leo's life. I want to be the father he deserves." Chloe finally turned to face him, her expression guarded. "Being in Leo's life isn't something you can demand, Michael. You'll have to prove that you're ready, and I won't let anyone, especially you, hurt him." "I'll prove it," Michael promised, his voice resolute. "Whatever it takes, I'll prove it to both of you." Just as Michael began taking steps to reconnect with Chloe and Leo, a new threat loomed in the shadows. Victor Hale, a shrewd and ambitious entrepreneur, had returned to the city. Once a rival of Michael in the tech world, Victor had also pursued Chloe years ago, only to be rejected without hesitation. The bitterness of that rejection lingered, and now, seeing Michael and Chloe's paths crossing again, Victor saw an opportunity for revenge. Victor first reappeared at a high-profile gala hosted by Evans Hotels. Chloe, as the company's president, was the centerpiece of the event, mingling with investors and delivering a powerful speech about the company's future. As she moved through the crowd with grace and authority, Victor approached her, his signature smirk in place. "Chloe," he greeted, his tone dripping with false charm. "You're as stunning as ever. It's no wonder the whole city is talking about you." Chloe turned, her expression polite but distant. "Victor, I didn't know you were back in town." "Oh, I've been keeping busy," he replied smoothly. "But when I heard about your success, I couldn't resist the chance to see it for myself. And, of course, I've heard whispers about you and Michael Grant. Quite the rekindled romance, isn't it?" Chloe's smile tightened. "What happens between Michael and me is none of your business, Victor." Victor raised his hands in mock surrender, his smirk widening. Of course, just making conversation. You know how people love to gossip." Without waiting for a response, Chloe excused herself, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Victor's intentions weren't innocent. A few days later, Chloe's instincts were proven correct. Tabloid headlines exploded with scandalous speculation. Billionaire CEO Michael Grant and hotel magnate Chloe Evans. Secret son revealed. The accompanying articles were filled with vague and invasive details about Leo, Michael, and Chloe's history. Chloe's phone buzzed incessantly with calls from reporters and concerned colleagues. Meanwhile, Michael, in the middle of a meeting, froze as his assistant handed him the headline. "Victor," Michael muttered under his breath. He immediately called Chloe, who answered with a tense voice. "Michael, I'm handling it," she said before he could speak. "I know Victor's behind this," Michael said. "We can't let him drag Leo into this mess." Chloe's voice was calm but firm. "I won't let anyone use Leo as a pawn. My lawyers are already drafting a statement. But Victor wants attention, Michael. Confronting him will only give him more power." Michael's jaw tightened. "I don't care about his power plays." He crossed a line. While Chloe worked with her legal team to contain the media frenzy, Michael decided to confront Victor directly. He found him at an exclusive business club, lounging with a glass of wine. "Michael," Victor exclaimed as if greeting an old friend, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" Michael didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You're behind that tabloid story," he said, his voice low but menacing. Victor chuckled, swirling his wine. Now, accusations like that could damage my reputation." Michael stepped closer, his tone icy. "Listen carefully. You don't touch Chloe or Leo again. If you do, I'll make sure you regret it." Victor's smile faltered for a split second before returning. "Such passion, Michael. But let's not forget, you abandoned her once. Maybe I'm just showing her what she should have had all along." Michael's fists clenched, but he refused to take the bait. "The difference between us, Victor, is that I'm trying to fix my mistakes. You're just trying to destroy what you can't have." With that, Michael turned and walked away, leaving Victor with a simmering glare. Chloe, meanwhile, had her own plan to protect Leo. Rather than hiding, she chose to confront the story head-on. She arranged for an exclusive interview with a respected journalist, presenting her story on her own terms. "Leo is my greatest joy," she said during the interview, her voice steady and filled with pride. "The public may speculate, but my son's life is not a scandal. It's a testament to love and resilience." The interview turned the tide, shifting the narrative in her favor. Public support poured in, and Victor's attempt to tarnish her reputation fell flat. Despite the victory, Chloe and Michael knew this was just the beginning. Victor had retreated for now, but his grudge remained, a lurking threat. Weeks passed, and life slowly settled back into a rhythm. Chloe Evans focused on her work at Evans Hotels, balancing the demands of leadership with her role as a mother. Michael Grant, meanwhile, steadily earned Leo's trust through small but meaningful gestures, teaching him how to ride a bike, helping him build Lego castles, and even cheering him on at his first soccer game. Despite their progress, there was still an unspoken tension between Chloe and Michael. Though she appreciated his efforts, the scars of the past made her hesitant to fully trust him again. Michael, however, was determined to prove he had changed, not just for Leo, but for her as well. One crisp spring evening, Michael called Chloe and asked her to meet him at a countryside property just outside the city. Though skeptical, Chloe agreed. When she arrived, the scene took her breath away. Nestled in a quiet clearing was a small pavilion, softly illuminated by twinkling string lights. The ground was scattered with rose petals, and at the center of the space was a beautifully set dining table for two. "Michael, what is this?" Chloe asked, stepping out of her car. She adjusted her coat against the cool evening breeze, her tone a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Michael appeared from behind the pavilion, dressed in a crisp shirt and slacks, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "A special evening," he said with a faint smile, "or someone very special." Chloe hesitated, but Michael gestured for her to follow him to the table. Over dinner, they laughed and reminisced about old times. For the first time in years, Chloe felt her guard begin to lower. But as dessert was served, Michael grew serious. He stood, walked to her side of the table, and knelt before her. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. "Chloe," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "These past months have shown me what truly matters. You and Leo are the family I never knew I needed, and I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the time I lost. You taught me strength, resilience, and love. I don't want to take another step forward without you by my side. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Chloe's eyes as she looked down at the man she had once thought she'd lost forever. For a moment, she hesitated, memories of the pain he had caused flashing through her mind. But then she looked at the sincerity in his eyes and thought of the man he had become, the father Leo adored, the partner she had always hoped for. "Yes, Michael," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll marry you." Michael slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to his feet, pulling her into a tight embrace. From behind a nearby tree, Leo ran out, unable to contain his excitement any longer. "I knew Mommy would say yes," he shouted, his smile lighting up the night. Chloe and Michael laughed, wrapping their arms around their son. For the first time in years, Chloe felt a profound sense of hope. This was their fresh start, a chance to build something stronger, together.